Hello and welcome to The Blueprint. I'm your host, Marley Finnegan. And before we dig in, please click like and subscribe below. No matter where you get your podcast, it helps us to reach more people. Also, consider leaving us a small donation, whether that be $1, $5 via one of the links below. It really helps us in funding the creation of this work. And it means a lot to know that you're out there and that you like us. So let's dig in. Hello and welcome to The Blueprint. I am your host, Marley Finnegan, and I am thrilled today to be joined by my friend, my teacher, and amazing human being, Ryan Ra James Kemp. He is a regenerative systems futurist, relational architect, the co-creator of Rebiz, founder of Six Sun Immersions, a global speaker and facilitator. Welcome to The Blueprint, Ra.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. Good to see you again.
So good to see you. So we're going to dive right in because we have so much potential content here. And how we originally meet is I actually took Ra's course, Rebiz, along with Project Tipping Point. They were life-changing courses. They expanded my worldview, my vision, my understanding of really the polycrisis and how everything is deeply interconnected. And so, Ra, I would love to go to sort of the origins. You've spent a ton of time in Indigenous community, living, breathing, and really deeply listening. How did this get started for you in terms of this immersion, this very intentional immersion into Indigenous culture and Indigenous wisdom?
Yeah, good question. It actually wasn't intentional, at least consciously. Maybe subconsciously, the blueprint said otherwise. But I kind of just had a normal upbringing, middle class, north of Boston, Irish and Ashkenazi Jewish parents, played baseball, ate hot dogs, hot dogs and beans. Lived a pretty normal life, went to school, studied finance, which when I look back, I'm like, wow, how'd I do that one? And when I was 20 years old, I quit the baseball team, realizing that that wasn't actually my dream. That was my parents' dream. The plants helped me out on that one to recognize that. I broke up with my partner of 3 years, and I moved to Hong Kong to study Chinese philosophy and international finance, finding a way to weave the credit necessities of the university into my traveling, which is what I always wanted to do. I wanted to do international business or international studies, but with the commitments of the Division I baseball team, I couldn't do that. So when I moved to Hong Kong, it was just, I kind of joke, it was like Aladdin, a whole new world. Foods, cultures, people living in a different way, worshiping Buddha, beautiful mountains, Thailand's right there, Malaysia's right there, Singapore's right there, mainland China. So for a 20-year-old who hadn't really left what's called New England, which is a very weird phrase, for a 20-year-old who hadn't really left that space and left that reality and left that worldview, it was an opening into a recognition that reality is not one thing. Or the paradigm, which etymologically means pattern, the pattern that I was living in was just one pattern. There were other patterns that were in existence. So when I came back to Boston, people told me that I had reverse culture shock, and I recognized that it was reverse lack of culture shock. So I started seeking experiences that fulfilled something within me that was latent, that I wasn't even sure what it was, but it wasn't being fulfilled from this normalcy that I had become accustomed to. So I then moved to Spain and finished university in Valencia in Spain. And then my first official job out of university was in Cameroon, in a small farming village named Bali Nyonga, up close to the border of Nigeria. And I was recruited by a professor to go and figure out why 50% of the food was going to waste in these farming confederations in the breadbasket of the country which his family was from. And that was probably one of the most powerful experiences that I ever had because I thought that I knew something coming out of university and that I was going to go and fix some problem in some place that I'd never heard of, you know? And meanwhile, I get there, I witness what colonialism is for the first time, colonialism and coloniality. I witness poverty, really, and simultaneously joy at the same time within that field of poverty. And I mainly, like one of my main, I say giveaways because I don't really like the takeaway, but one of my main giveaways was that I didn't know how to grow my own food.
Mm.
So I had lived for 22 years of my life consuming food, never planting a seed in the ground, nor finding that as an issue that I'd never planted a seed in the ground. Yet I rely on food to live and have zero relationship with food other than shoving it in my mouth. And that was a problem for me. That woke something up in me where it's like, oh yeah, I'm here telling people how to live sustainably, and I've never even planted a seed. What a hypocrite. I can't sustain myself. What am I here talking about sustainability for? What a joke. So I came back and I left and immediately went to Hawaii to learn to grow food. And that's where I met my first two teachers, this Sri Lankan Tamil sadhu and this Afro-Cuban man who rewired my brain to the degree that they then shot me out into the world. And I landed in Australia in the Northern Territory where I met the first, people call them Aboriginal, but they're the original people of the Darwin, what's called Darwin now, the Larakia people. And I met a grandma there. And I had the same name as her son, so she kind of took a liking to me and she brought me in for a weekend and just like blew my mind and my heart wide open with the things she was sharing with me. And from that point forward, something was activated within me that there was deep wisdom within the land and that you could listen to the land and that you could listen to ancestors that aren't human and that if you cut a tree down in one place, something else would happen in a different place.
Mm.
So this sort of like decoupling of my understanding of spatial recognition, also time. So this whole cartography of what they call this now, the time-space cartography, this sort of started to awaken in me when I was with her. And then she sent me to and one of her other grandma friends, and the next thing I know, I'm being ping-ponged to these different elders in these different communities from Alaska to Mexico to Ghana. I mean, I was all over the place. And finally, it just came to my recognition that I was in between worlds,
Mm.
or as some people would say, to put it in a more scientific methodological phrase, living with two eyes in the two-eyed seeing, Mi'kmaq way of looking out of one eye with Western Occidental intelligences and ways of knowing, and one other eye with original people's intelligences or kinship ways of knowing. And then my journey became integrating those. And that's essentially what my work and life has been. And they're not separate, my work and my life, which is what my first teacher told me when I was like, "Oh, can I help you at your nonprofit?" He was having this cool nonprofit that merged and showed the celestial navigation routes between the Caribbean and the South Pacific because he lived in Samoa and spoke Samoan. And then he also spoke Spanish and was from Cuba. So he was connecting these two places through language and food and culture. And I was like, "Can I help with your nonprofit?" He's like, "My nonprofit, dude, this is my life." He's like, "You want to help with my life? Sure." He's like, "I just put it into a project because that's what we have to do here in this three-dimensional space that we're in. That's just what we have to do sometimes.
Right.
And that's what I've recognized now is like that's really the integration of work and life is when your life's learning is tied into your work, which also helps others come about their own life's learning, which then gets tied into their work. And then it's this evolutionary process that starts to happen, as opposed to what Karl Marx would say, which is called toil. And he's like, there's a big difference between work and toil. And most of what we're doing in the world currently is just toil.
Hmm.
I'll,
Absolutely.
I'll pause for there.
Yeah, you within, Rebiz and Project Tipping Point, there are so many deep, deep realizations associated with what very clearly lives in your body as wisdom gained from experience, but also, as we've talked about in the past, remembered. And there's two aspects, mainly, the introduction of Indigenous original peoples' worldviews into the conversation for a lot of people that have never really even acknowledged that we live in a dominant worldview and that we do have these overarching sort of blinders as to our lived experience, as you said, based on, that perspective. And the other aspect that you really go deep into that is so interconnected to our dominant paradigm is language and etymology. And, the so much of our language and the corporate jargon are really encoded with these colonial influences in our language. So I'm curious about, in a concise, I mean, it's not even possible to be concise on these two topics in any fashion, but how you see the biggest levers for change within these concepts, which again are massive.
Yeah. Well, worldview is very different than mindset. The mind is set in the worldview,
Mm.
but most people try to change their mindset, but it's set, you know? It's like whenever I think of mindset, I think of those, it's like a periscope and how it can look 180 degrees, but it can't see what it doesn't know because it's concretized into a specific worldview. So until you introduce a different worldview, then all of your mindsets are going to replicate the patterns that it can see.
Mhm.
Now, the worldview partially is made up of language. I mean, like they say in the Bible, first came the word.
Mm.
My teacher would say, well, actually, it was a thought, but we'll just say it's a word. But anyway, the thought probably came through in a language too. So the worldview is often rooted or uprooted from natural law. And one worldview, this dominant worldview that you're talking about, sometimes called the dominant hegemonic worldview. Dominant has two connotations. Dominant means power over, not power with, and by volume. So, for example, the dominant hair color in the room is brown. So, this dominant worldview exists in a extractive, we can call it the unholy trinity:
Mm.
separability or separation, mechanization, and reductionism.
Mm.
So it thrives on the separation of human and nature, which even for those people who say that they want to reconnect with nature, you're living in separation because when you want to reconnect with something, that means you aren't already her.
Mm.
Mechanization, so that life functions as a machine and you can do input output in this very rote technologic or technological way. Technologic, machine logic, yeah, technology.
Mhm.
And then reductionism, that you can break down things into their parts, compartmentalized, and understand something by its parts. Like, let me cut down the tree and then write about the tree on the paper that I got from the tree, as opposed to learn from the tree. Or let me kill that animal and do an autopsy and study its leg to try to understand the animal.
Mm.
So that views things not as a whole sum of the parts, but rather that it's just parts. So that unholy trinity is a big issue within the dominant hegemonic worldview, as among many others. And this worldview especially in business and mostly in English, is centered on war terminology. So, I mean, it's very simple, even when people are like, I want to tackle or fight climate change. People have messaged me on LinkedIn and they said, we're doing the same work. I said, what's that? And they said, fighting climate change. And I said, no, I'm not doing that work. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, why would I want to fight my mom? Like, like, what is climate change even? What is this abstraction with the obscuration of relationships that we label something as climate? And then we have something else as nature. And then we have something else as there's the compartmentalization and reductionism right there, you know? But yeah, I mean, even like in business, CEO, chief executive officer, right? That's a military, it's an officer who executes bullet points. What ammunition do you need to get your point across? You know, taking the flak, marketing operations and strategies and campaigns. All of these things that they're war terms. So then if the worldview is dominant, power over, not power with, and we're framing everything in a way that's attacking our mother, which we need to live, but we're trying to fight her in some way to get something better for ourselves, but we need her, then like the whole worldview is essentially creating destruction and creating harm, attempting to fix it, which is the biggest issue, right? Which is why we've had countless global summits and we've had countless countries commit to agreements and nothing is changing because they're attempting to change it from within the same paradigm, from within the same worldview of transactionality, of extraction, of separation, of all of the ripples that come from that initial rupture. So this other worldview, rooted in a language of relativity, in a language of relationality, in a language of kinship, is some people can call it the kinship worldview, which is a really beautiful book by one of my uncles, Wahink Petopa, called Restoring the Kinship Worldview, also a woman named Darcia Narvaez. I may have mispronounced her last name, and if I did, sorry, Darcia.
I love that book.
Super good book. So you can call it the kinship worldview, you can call it the original people's worldview, but there are principles of life that have been translated through humans in any given place that are in the rhythm and accordance with the bioculture of that region. So this worldview structures itself in a much different way. And in fact, eventually, you don't view the world, right, as this outside thing from you. If you practice the kinship worldview to the depth that it's teaching you, then you are entangled within the world so much so that you aren't the one viewing it
Mm.
anymore. Because then you have to shift that separation too. And then you're being lived, right? You're not living, you're being lived. It's both. But I only share the other side of it because so often we have this anthropocentric model that we're the one doing everything when we're being done.
Mm.
And if you align yourself truly with these worldviews, with this ancestrality, with this relativity, and what I mean by relativity is like what one of my uncles said. He said, Einstein, man, everyone loved that guy. He's cool. I liked him too. Crazy hair. But he said, theory of relativity. But in Lakota, we say, Matakoye Oyasin, to all my relatives. That's relativity. Understand your relatives. Then you can speak and live in a way that's embedded in relativity. So science and spirituality, science and original cultures, they're aligned, but they speak in different ways.
Mhm.
So part of the work, which is part of life's orientation for me, is to find the language and the contextual infrastructure to enable these paradigms to speak without diluting one another, without contorting one another into each other, and allowing both measuring sticks to be valid in their own way. So I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. And I think, I've been really keyed into the idea of hierarchical versus non-hierarchical. And something that's kind of come through for me recently is around this idea of, colonialism and this disconnection to the sacred connection and that relationality almost being linked to the idea that, when we are together in community, in tribal belonging and sense of place and purpose and connection to the land, we have that deep sense of sacred space and sacred connection to all that is. We are one with everything. And when, colonialism begins, it's really this hierarchical need for belonging, need for the ego to feel satiated by some sort of sense of something because it's missing that relationality to the sacred. And I don't know, that feels really oversimplifying, but that's kind of been something coming through, is like this deep need for the ego to prove itself because it's lost that sense of connection to community, connection to all that is, to the trees, to the mycelium, to the birds, to all aspects. And I suppose I would love to know, obviously Indigenous worldviews would be considered deeply spiritual by the dominant paradigm, even though really it's it's relationship. It's, again, not necessarily a label. It's much deeper than that. It's that interconnection to all that is with deep reverence and respect. So how do you recommend people that may be new to Indigenous worldview and their understanding begin to sort of unravel the layers, because it feels like there are many layers for sure in sustainability and, just evolution, where the farther you go, the farther you realize it continues into consciousness. So would love to understand like where you kind of recommend people begin with respect for this deep wisdom.
Yeah, I recommend people begin with the water.
Mm,
You know,
agree with that, or on that deeply.
yeah. It was it was told to me in a very direct, cutting way in that moment, which is what I needed because sometimes I'm a little stubborn. So this person said this gave me this teaching. I don't know if he was looking at me or not. He could have been looking at everyone in the room. I have no idea. But it seemed like he was looking at me. And he said, I don't care what you do in your life. I don't care how many places you go. If you don't say thank you every day to the water, you're a part of the problem. And that like rocked me. And then I started crying. My waters moved. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to comprehend what he was saying. Like part of the problem, well, I thought I was so good. Well, I like took it so personally, like all this stuff at first. You have to like move through all that stuff, you know. But what he was saying was that water is life.
Mhm.
In Lakota, they say mini wachoni. In Hawaii, they say ola ikawai. There's a lot of languages they all say water is life. That means that life is water, right? They're synonyms. So what he was saying was that I don't have a relationship with life because I don't have a relationship with water. Because go somewhere in this beautiful Mother Earth and tell me if any life exists in places where there's no water.
Mhm.
So if I don't have a relationship with life through the conduit of life, then how can I approach and be a part of the solution when I don't have a relationship with life? So we're talking about relationality, right? But now we're encountering a whole different thing. Like, wait, water? This is not a resource. This is a being. This is a feminine energy. I can talk with her, right? There's all of these other things that start to arise. You're talking about animism, right? Animism deeply rooted within kinship worldview. Anthropocentrism is separate from animism, meaning I'm the only one human. I'm the only one conscious here. Well, the cow's conscious and the tree's conscious, but not like me. I'm the most conscious, you know. Whatever that energy is, human exceptionalism and anthropocentrism are tied, very closely knit. So now I can speak with water, but wait, she's mother earth, grandfather fire, father sun. Wait, are they actually my grandfather? Wait. So all of a sudden these things start to open. Why do they call them grandfather? This isn't just for fun. Like I don't call some random guy on the street grandpa for fun, you know? Nor have these cultures that have been here in continuity and cultural context for some people would say 10,000, some people would say 30,000, some people would say 150,000, depends who you ask. United States has been here for about 300, to put it into context. So there's a reason why they're referring to these as ancestors. Okay, well, they came before us. I'm built of them. Like they say in Sherlock Holmes, elemental, my dear Watson. Yeah. Elementally, foundationally, these things, these beings make up our makeup. So if I don't have a relationship with them, I don't have a relationship with me because I don't understand me, because I don't understand them, because I don't have a relationship with them. So I can't understand you, Marley, if I don't have a relationship with you. Right? So this whole thing of relationality is let's just make relations. Let's just start to get to know one another. Not in a way where I need to take from you, not in a way where I need to extract from you, because we all know, hopefully by now, that relationships don't last very long when you only take something from somebody else or you have power over that person. Relationship doesn't exist within hierarchy, it exists within equilibrium. It exists within a reciprocal nature of give and receive, not give and take.
So
So,
interesting. One of our first rebiz classes, you asked, how many of you thank your water? And I had started thanking my water probably a month before that. But we are water beings on a water planet. And even the idea of hierarchy is just sort of this manipulation of separation, which is a mechanism of control. And, I think as you are inferring, when we are disrespectful or disconnected to the water or view it as a resource outside of ourselves, it is a mirror for our feelings about us and how we interrelate to the world in deeper ways. And, I think I practice being in devotion to the water and really trying to listen while honoring the water in all aspects, whether that be in the bathtub or at the lake or the river or in my morning glass. It's so interesting. And I would love to know, as you've taught, rebiz over time, and there have been countless students, has there been an evolution in that relationship? And I guess, how do people find that concept and experience? Um, I think that in our world, it's almost like you can tap into that wisdom and knowing, and then the world keeps going in the dominant worldview, and you can like click out or forget, like it's easy to be reconditioned to the separation without even realizing it. But have you seen
mhm.
an evolution in that relationship?
For those who listen and take what I'm saying, receive what I'm saying in a way that they know that I'm just not talking for my own benefit. Yeah. The people who actually daily start to develop a relationship with water, their lives change. I mean, that's what this guy told me too. He's like, do this every day for a year and let me know what happens. Money back guarantee, you know?
Very good.
Because it's an evolution. Why? Because water is in all of life. And you have your own internal waters. Like you said, we're 70, 80% water. So you might talk really nice to this water. Hey, I love you so much, my mama. But how do you talk to yourself?
Mhm.
How do you talk to other people? You
Well, and
know?
it's the sacred feminine waters. It's not only our cellular makeup, but it is the way that we grieve and move energy through our bodies. It is honoring ourselves through love and rest and a lot of things that are really antithetical to the dominant paradigm of capitalism and productivity. And so it is
Hmm.
also honoring the greater energy of feminine wisdom, which is inherent in every single human being, that we have both and that it is a constant balancing. And
Yeah.
I would love to hear about that too, in terms of your knowing of how the view of the masculine and feminine within and that balancing and how that is interconnected to the time that we're in.
Hmm. Well, the as far as your other question first, the evolution of how people go about it, most of the people who come into the course, that's the first time they've ever heard someone ask them that. But then over time, so that's not changing. Like the people who come in, let's say 50 people come in, normally like one or two people have done it like once or twice in their life. But every single person wants to do something to help the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the same thing when I did a speech in Prague. I was like, how many of you want to help or save or solve climate change or blah, whatever the phrase was? And like everyone raised their hand. And then how many of you have ever said thank you to the water? No one raised their hand. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again, right? Because she's the one who told me to start up Rebiz, the water.
Mm-hmm.
She said, start Rebiz and deliver the message about me
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of every single course. And then people will find their course. Because if you want to learn about regeneration, if you want to learn about the circulation and distribution of resources, if you want to learn about how to be fluid and follow your intuition in your life, if you want to learn about transparency and clarity, if you want to learn about soft power, if you want to learn about all these things, just learn with the water. Literally every single thing that you need, she knows already.
She does.
So this is what I'm saying. Like in the feminine energy, this is what you're saying too, right? I mean, the elders say they're like, if you want to re-indigenize slash decolonize yourself, you focus on time, you focus on language, and you focus on your recognition and comprehension of the feminine energy. And these three things, that's what you focus on. If you actually want to shift the paradigm and reality that you live within. So yeah, she's like the water and the fire, my main two teachers, you know? And I'm blessed to be able to take care of the fire in many different ceremonies. And I learned a lot. Like those are the OGs,
Totally.
you know? So, and fire, the only element that human hands can't pollute,
Mm.
you know? So you want to learn about something pure in that sort of sense too? Learn with the fire. There's a lot to learn from the elements because they're the foundational knowledge and the foundational teachings, and that's why original people learn with them first. Because you want to go learn from a guru in the mountains in India, just learn from the mountains in India.
Mhm.
What's the guru going to tell you that the mountains aren't going to tell you if you can really start to listen, right? So like that's a direct line of connection. The church and all this religion, they came in as a proxy. Oh, you want to connect with the creator? Well, then you got to go through us, you know? So get rid of the proxy. This is the thing, like learn to speak and listen directly to the beings in nature which are you elementally, foundationally, but you're not the same, which is where I have this problem with oneness. Because
Mhm.
Christopher Columbus or Cristobal Colon, where the word colonization came from, colonización, Cristobal Colon, he talked about oneness too. He talked about the new world, he talked about the new earth, he talked about all this stuff. So like sometimes I'm like, whoa, it's a little too much oneness for me. Because there's only oneness or unification or unity in the diversity, right? So unique and unity both have uni as prefixes. So the oneness has to be more like an old growth forest,
Mm.
where it's one forest, but there's a lot of different trees, a lot of different species, some mushrooms over here, some other things over here. That's also oneness in diversity.
Mhm.
Right. So that's more important than the existential realization of oneness, which is important at a certain stage. But then you have to come back into the diversity and the uniqueness in the unification in order for harmony to be achieved. Harmony being a musical term or a mathematical term of various different components coming together and playing that universe. Yeah, that one song. So a lot of this stuff is important to sit with and learn with the elements.
Absolutely. I was recently in Montana and I was helping to facilitate a retreat, and it wound up being all men. And really what we were focusing on was a lot of divine feminine principles and re-engaging in the body and kindness and the sacred waters. And we had this amazing boulder that overhung over the fire, and it was a protector, but it had so much wisdom. It was palpable of what it knew, how it protected humans through, you know, centuries from the elements, but also its relationship to the water and to humanity and to grief. Like I touched it at one point and just started crying. There was so much about, and I continue to be called to this idea that the waters, our own sacred waters within, want to help us move what's not in service to us, the energies that are stagnant, the old stories, what's blocking us from seeing what's truly here and what's truly happening in this moment. That aversion to grieving and aversion to feeling has been a part of the productivity narrative, but it is no longer, for a long time, helpful. But
Mhm.
just the idea, I love the idea of, the diversity necessary and oneness. And I think you're right. Like oneness is something you come to when you do realize, we are everything. We're all made up of the same thing in the same story at the same time. But so how do we engender that relationality to have respect for all that is the same that we would respect ourselves? And maybe that's part of the problem is the lack of respect even for our own sacred waters, right?
Yeah.
So circling back in a little bit of a different direction, I really want to talk about Six Sun Immersions, which you
Mhm.
founded with your partner, Marissa, and the Atomi Toltec prophecy that was a part of that foundation. I understand that they are one of the most astronomically intelligent peoples, and this bigger understanding of the time that we're in now and what you understand from that prophecy and your experience with those peoples.
Sure. Yeah, the sixth sun is one way to call the time that we're in. Also, it's called immersions, not retreats, because I don't want people to have to retreat from their life,
Mm.
you know. Let's go on a retreat. Let's escape
Mm.
and retreat, another war term, yeah. But some people are like, I just want to retreat myself. I'm like, well, that's cool.
You're like, you can call it that.
You can call it that then, as long as you're not retreating from your life and then having to go back and then retreat again, because obviously your life is something where you have to retreat from, just part of the problem, right? So sixth sun is a time period. that is measured by a lot of traditional calendar systems, including the Otomi Toltec and the Mexica or the Maya, or many people measure it, but they're the ones that I've been learning with one of the maestras of that. She's part of the Earth Timekeepers organization. Her name's Damishi, Geraldine Patrick Encina, and she is amazing. She's an ethno-ecologist and a timekeeper, and I learn a lot from her, and she's amazing. You can go check out her work too.
I will.
Basically, time, language, feminine energy. So we're in time now, right? Right now, we operate in solar time. Solar is masculine time. We can call it, it's more linear. Yeah.
Mm,
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then you drink for 2 days, then you get back, right? There's no difference between Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, except you're excited for the weekend or something.
mm,
The months are out of sync, right? September, sept means 7, oct means 8, but it's the 10th month.
mm.
We're a little bit off.
That's you can say that again.
And we're in the year 2025, right? Who told you that? The church, because Jesus was born, and now all of a sudden, because Jesus was born, we're in the year 2025? Not so much, right? So we're not in the year 2025. We can call it that, but like, who designated that? Our months are not even equating with the number of months that we write. And the days are all the same, except for the weekends, which we basically just try to bury away our
Mm,
depression into a different space. Okay.
mm,
And these function in a 12-month, 30-day cycle roughly, and we're 5 days off. So then we have to like create the leap year and all this weird stuff. So the calendar is kind of off, right?
mhm,
So people say, well, my company wants to be sustainable. I say, are you in sync with natural time? Yes or no?
mm,
No company is in sync with natural time because we're instantaneously with the Gregorian calendar out of sync with natural time.
mm.
So these other calendar systems operate by the moon and the sun, right? There's the balance. Moon, grandma,
Yeah,
masculine, feminine. It's a balance. It's not either or. I'm not saying screw the sun. I love the sun. We need
right.
the sun.
Life. Yeah, totally.
And we also need the moon.
Hmm.
The moon's connected to our waters, right?
Totally.
She pulls the ocean in and out, the tides, just like us, which is why when the full moon, people are like, I go nuts.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, what do you think's
It,
happening with the moon pulling your waters and exposing things like it does on the shores of the ocean inside of you that haven't been processed yet,
that's
right?
where the term lunatics comes from. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lunatica. So the moon operates in 1320, 13 cycles or 13 amplifications, 20 nahuales, 20 energies. So without getting too deep into it, because I don't want to give a whole calendar lesson here, but basically, the moon and the sun sync up every 52 years. So a sun, the sixth sun, a sun is 5,200 years approximately.
Wow.
So the last time that we completed, and a big sun, a galactic sun, is 5 cycles of 5,200 years. A
Mm,
little different than a Q5, Q4, year 5 planning. So we were in the last time that a sun started was at the peak of the last ice age,
mm,
25,000 roughly years ago. So we've just completed a big sun, which is 5 suns. So we just entered into a new sun or the sixth sun.
what year was that? Do you know?
Yeah, some people thought it was 2012, but it was 2013 according to Damishi's calculations. So we were a little bit off.
You know what? And the thing that I find so funny, and I've thought this forever, is the number 13 and why 13 was unlucky. 13 is the feminine. Like it's
Mm,
13 moons, 2013. It's
mm,
the feminine, which is sort of, I mean, it feels so deeply connected to sovereignty because when we are in rest and when we are in honoring and when we are in communion with our waters and we are connected to life, and
Yeah.
then we are less able to be controlled.
Yeah. So basically whatever way you want to, and that's a really beautiful point, right? The 13. Also in Maya they say 13 thank yous. I mean there's a lot of stuff with the 13. 1, 3, 4, 4 directions. So whether it's 2012 or 2013, either way, that was a transition. Some people called it the apocalypse. Apocalypse in Greek means the lifting of the veil. So there was a
Mhm.
shift of energy that was happening 2012, 2013, that we entered into a new trecena, a new 13-year cycle, and the new sun. So this sun, we're shifting out of the fifth sun, which is sort of the amplification of these systems of destruction and separation, and we're entering back into a lot of the collapse or the composting of these with the opportunity, not a guarantee, but the opportunity to align ourselves with Earth's original principles and become in alignment with her evolution so that we can continue to evolve, acknowledging the ancestrality and the futurity of what we're doing in the present. So this is a time where a lot of systems are going to be moving out. And the elders say, don't only focus on what's collapsing, don't really even focus on that too much, focus on what's emerging. And that's the time of the sixth sun.
Mm.
And it's a long time that we're in it, but it's also a time of purification.
Mhm.
So as some of us might know, that's not necessarily always the most clean, happy type of
Comfortable.
times.
No. It's a
So
shedding.
it's a shedding, right?
Mhm.
Um, so six sun immersions, why we exist is because we want to provide people the opportunity to connect with the foundational parts of living with elders guided by their cultures, cosmovisions, and languages with the assistance of the master plants or master fungi, and then simultaneously weave that into regenerative post-growth systems design so that we can actually create systems of ancestral future nature. So when people are coming in, they're getting direct transmissions with the elders. They're sitting with the plants if the cultures do work with the plants in that capacity or the fungi. And then they're moving and recognizing and seeing how these cultures that really is a synonym of continuity and sustainability,
Mm.
how the cultures already were working with these energies and that we don't need to continue to try to recreate the wheel and build all these technologies that are just decontextualizing and disassociating us further. We can focus our energy on aligning our skills and blueprints with natural law. And that's the opportunity of the sixth sun, is that we start to become re-engaged as children of Mother Earth, and we all seed that tipping point together where we move into the space of evolution with her, not without her. We don't need to go to Mars. We don't need to do all this stuff. Some people can. Some people, I mean, I don't want to. I like bananas, and I'd ra I'd rather stay. I don't think they have banana trees on Mars. So,
I
so
like
yes,
it.
so yeah, sixth sun is like this. But really, for me, it was a way also to bring the elders in, so people could meet them because I'm with them all the time, but a lot of people don't get to meet elders and real elders, not just olders. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Not,
real knowledge.
yeah, and then bring them in and find ways to bring their wisdom and knowledge into situations where people can start to recognize and feel the different worldviews and see the integration and interconnection themselves, while also then creating benefit sharing reciprocity opportunities for their projects that they're creating around the world. From Alejandrina, when I travel with her, and the orphanage children's home that she's building in Oaxaca that will continue the Mazatec language and train the children in the ceremonial life ways of the Mazatec, to Earth Elders, where they're creating 52 traditional ecological knowledge centers in the 52 bioregions of the planet, or
Mhm.
or Lakota small farms, where they're building a way of life school and rematriating the buffalo like whatever these is, like these projects are also really important. So I wanted to build a network of allies who are coming into these spaces who can align with the sixth sun and the movement that this is asking of us as people of privilege. And my description of privilege being the ability to repair the conditions of what caused my privilege.
Mm, wow. I I think it's absolutely amazing how you've designed a life to be able to engage and bring this wisdom while also connecting people so deeply to the plants, and to that sacred knowledge. And something that that's been coming up for me around working with the plants and plant medicine, such as ayahuasca or psilocybin, or the plethora of things, natural things that exist, is that, so many people express deep fear around it. My experience was that Grandma Aya wants to work with what you intend, but also what you run from, and the things that you are intentionally avoiding or unintentionally can be the keys to your liberation all the same. There's nothing, you know, mean or um, unpredictable about it necessarily. I think that we know what it is that we need to look at, and the fear is deriving from knowing that we're avoiding something. But the message that came through to me really clearly was that regardless of what our human ego wants to see or think that we're seeing, the medicine works within your DNA at a cellular level, helping you to reconnect to that earth wisdom, because it is the earth, Mother Earth, that is working through those beautiful beings. And I don't know if you've experienced, deep fear around that with people. I think that people are deeply called to this work, and it's a really beautiful, amazing way to reconnect with that wisdom. The other thing I wanted to ask you was that I had heard from a shaman in 2020 that the ending of the last cycle and the start of the sixth sun was like a highly masculine paradigm of 26,000 years. And that this is the start of a feminine paradigm, or the feminine energy in a 26,000 year cycle. Is that what you understand as well? Or is it not quite that? Is that not the a part of the prophecy, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, sounds good to me.
Right? Sounds pretty
Pro-
great.
prophecy doesn't mean predestination.
Hmm.
Prophecy gives us a choice. It was important when I learned that. Or else you just kind of are like, well, it's going to happen anyway, so what do I have to
Right.
do? You know, prophecy, well, fate, right? Fate roughly means now that the gods have spoken, how will you respond?
Hmm.
Prophecy is relatively similar. It's an opportunity, not a guarantee, right? So part of why we're at this, so the feminine energy coming back as integrated within the masculine energy, beautiful. Um, Now, I think there's sometimes a confusion around matriarchy and patriarchy, that it's women and men,
Hmm.
not masculine and feminine principles. But they both have to be integrated here.
Hmm.
And we don't have to escape the matrix, you know? Well, you can, but matrix comes from mater, which means mother. So when you escape one, you have to re-enter the other again, you know? So this matriarchy, same prefix, yeah, mater, M-A-T-R, this feminine energy that nurtures and cares for all of life and creates and is beautiful and all of these things. It's not that the masculine isn't that, but the toxic patterning of the masculine energy that's currently in power structures is not inclusive of the feminine. So part of the separation that happened was the separation of the balance between masculine and feminine.
Mhm.
So when the feminine energy is coming back in, it's not that women will be running the world or something like this. It's that the feminine principles of life will be rooted in balance with the structural components of the masculine energy so that you can build structures of beauty that nurture and create life rather than destroy and harm life. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for that. I mean, the Eagle Condor talks a little bit about this. There's a lot of different prophecies that talk about various different things in this of this nature. But if at the heart of the separation that we're suffering from is the separation of these two energies,
Mhm.
then the reparation or the conciliation of these energies is also at the central point of the healing.
Mhm.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think that's what the way I see it too. It's not a tipping of the scales in opposition. It's definitely an honoring of unification and a balancing of and a rebirthing of the feminine within our cultural paradigm really intended for many years to squash feminine knowing within men, and feeling and intuition. And I mean, of course, sort of the intentional war or degradation of paganism and so many things through history and time and space are deeply connected to where we are now with the imbalance. And I think that's a huge thing that maybe a lot of people don't deeply understand, is that each one of us hold these principles, these energies within us, and that it is this beautiful dance of reconciliation and love, which rekindles, that peace and equanimity within. And, you and I think we could talk for days and days, and there's so many things I still want to travel into, but you talk a lot about remembering the future. And on the blueprint, we love to talk about the most optimal future for all and imagining that, envisioning that. So I would love to close with, you see many, many things. Um, and I find them to be amazingly beautiful and inspirational. But what do you see from where you sit in this moment as far as our most optimal future, and where and the steps to get there? And I want to also just mention that, Rebiz goes into concepts of degrowth and very structured, systemic ways in which we can design societies differently. This is not only, high level wisdom, it's also doing the do of how we get there. So I would love to open that question.
Yeah, thank you for that. Remembering the future. So I'd like words. Remembering, right? We say this word a lot. Is it like, oh, remembered my car keys? Is that what we're doing with our connection? Is it that simple? Is the opposite of remembering forgetting? Or is the opposite of remembering dismembering?
Mm.
Right? So if we're remembering, let's just start with this word. Remembering is not a mental conceptual act. Remembering has to do with weaving ourselves back into the tapestry of life that we've been dismembered from. Another way to put it is we live in a big community with Mother Earth. There's a lot of members. Just like the gym, right? You have a membership agreement. Our membership agreement started with our first breath out.
Mm.
The agreement is that we breathe back in.
Mm.
That's reciprocity. Our first breath in, the agreements that we breathe back out. So my uncle said, if you don't like that membership agreement, don't breathe back out. Good luck.
Mhm.
So the membership agreement is reciprocity from the get-go. Yeah.
Yeah.
With our breath. So this remembering is an embodied process
Mm.
of stitching ourselves back into the community members of life and being a good member, not dropping the weights on someone's foot,
Mm.
not stealing their water bottle, when they're at a certain other machine in the gym. Being a good member, that's what remembering is about.
Mm.
The future, what's that? You know? Is the future real? I mean, some people say
Mm.
the future already exists. In Hawaii, they say, Ika wa ma mua ka wa ma hope. The future is in the past. The past is in the future.
Mm.
What does that mean? Well, I like to give examples of, and I love them both dearly, my mom and my sister. I'm not the easiest son probably to have, I'm like, my mom's like, where are you? I'm like, in the mountains of Colombia. She's like, oh no. I'm like, no, no, I'm safe. Don't worry about it. I haven't worn shoes in a week. Don't worry. It's good. I'm drinking out of the river, you know? But she's like, I always worry about you. I'm like, I get that, but like, I'm safe. I'm good. I've been doing this for a long time. There's good energy. And I'm like, because you worry about me even if I'm not doing these things. So what's up? And she says, well, I'm just a worrier. I was
Mhm.
like, okay. And I was like, why is that? Well, she said, well, my mom was a worrier.
Story.
And I was like, oh, okay. And what about her? She's like, well, her mom was a worrier too. And now I see my sister. My sister's a worrier. So is my sister in the future or,
Mm.
or is she the past? I don't know. That's my question, right? The past is not yet done, as Bio says.
Mm.
So, what is the future if we're just replicating and projecting the past through the conditions of now into the place that we call the future? Is that even the future? Or is it just a duplication of the past that we have a different name for? So, when we're remembering the future, first of all, I meet a lot of people, they call themselves visionaries.
Mm.
They're like, I'm a visionary. I'm like, that's nice. Do you see what's here? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, does your vision work? Do you see what's here now? Or do you just see what's over there that doesn't exist? Because to be a visionary, you have to see what's here. You have to have the vision of what's here already. This is why it's not new, it's new with a K,
Mhm.
right? So I don't like this whole new age thing. I have more of a new age thing with a K. Because if you're a visionary, you see what's here already, and it couldn't have not been here because matter can neither be created nor destroyed,
Mm.
right? So if you want to create a future that's remembering something, if that's being stitched back together so that the future can live, then you actually have to have a vision of what's here
Mm.
that's beyond the monopolized narrative of where we think the future is going to go. So for me, the future only exists in a place where we can actually alchemize and transmute the duplicative patterns that we continue to recreate so that we liberate the future to happen in a way that is novel and that's affirmative of all of life. So the vision for me of what's happening in the future, I learned from one of my teachers, Kumu Ramsey Tom, with Ho'oponopono, and this is part of what the Ho'oponopono work is, not the four phrases.
Mhm.
That's a decontextualized, commodified version that people
Mhm.
play guitar in like a field about or something. But this is like an ancestral karmic liberation alignment technique between the future and the past and now, which is all one line alignment. Yeah. So for me, the most radical, I was on a panel in Prague at this innovation conference recently. What's the most radical future that you could predict? And I said, the most radical future that I could predict would be if AI, because the whole conference was about AI.
Mm.
And I just kept talking about ancestral intelligence.
Yes, thank you.
Just so there was a balance.
Yeah.
I said I would love if AI recognized its own dominant hegemonic patterning to the degree that it
Mm.
actually started to teach us into the kinship worldview. So it started to spread the information through its artificial intelligence rooted in ancestral intelligence, and it figured out which direction we're moving in to the degree that it helped us to reroute ourselves into a future in relationship, not in transaction, where we can enable the future generations to continue to reincarnate here, which the Dalai Lama said is a pretty big worry right now if we kind of mess up our human experiment, you know.
Yep.
So we're in this trajectory of remembering the future. You can't remember something without being rooted back into the ancestrality, human and more than human, of where we come from. If you don't have roots, how are you going to grow a tree that's going to bear fruits? So right now we don't have roots, the majority of us, but there's certain people who do, the original peoples, they haven't lost the roots. So go and learn how to connect with your own ancestry from the other people guiding you towards your own roots. Then when you move that way, then you can actually be resilient when the wind blows. If you have roots, then the wind's not going to topple you over and you can start to grow. And then you can form a grove of other people where you start to feed the future, right? John Trudell calls this the DNA, the descendants now ancestors. This is what we are. We're descendants and now we're ancestors. So become a good ancestor. Become an ancestor worth descending from, as Martine Prechtel would say. This is the work of transcendence, of evolution. Because then you might reincarnate into the future in the same line that you helped to create. So do you want to build a better future now for you in the future? And if you do, then start now. And there's ways to learn how to do that. And the best way to learn how to do that for me is to learn with life, because that's the original teacher. That's the one. So that's my vision of the future for me. We have to liberate it right now, because right now it's just duplicating the same patterns over and over, expecting a different result, which Einstein calls insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
This
that.
this is a perfect time to bring up, I had a dream last night because of our conversation, and it was directly connected to you and your etymological wisdom about understanding what the word educate means, and edu specifically. And so this feels, because I think sometimes people get really intimidated by, what do I do and where do I go? And disconnected and separated from their own heart wisdom, their own deep sacred waters. So can you talk about that etymology briefly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, education, the prefix e means to, like, out. Ducare means to lead. So educare means to lead out of what is already here. So education is not about filling an empty vessel with some sort of external information. It's about drawing out what is already inside of you. So connecting it to everything that we're saying, right? What are we made of? Who are we? The water, the earth, the wind, our breath, the fire, our heart. There's these different, what are we? What are we drawing out? So proper education, not indoctrination, but education is enabling the person to draw out the wisdom that exists within themselves so that they can create with that in the world. So these educational pathways that don't enable people to express what is already inside of their blueprint kind of becomes a little bit of a problem, you know?
Yeah.
Because so that's, and it's really important. And a lot of that has to do with, you have to unlearn a lot too. Like Kumu says, empty the coconut.
Everything is coming up unlearning for me. This concept of unlearning and really, I think when we can distill away the noise and the dominant worldview perspectives, obviously can feel easier said than done, but it is that, we are all ancestors. We are all connected to original peoples in our DNA, no matter who you are. Like that.
Yeah.
And not to say that you're just able to tune in and then all of a sudden you're an elder. But really that when we cut through the noise, there is a deep truth omnipresent within our hearts. And it's connected to the earth. It's connected to each other. But we have to move beyond those other energies, judgments, separation to be able to see it and feel it.
Yeah, I mean, we can't not be connected with the earth. Like, good luck, you know? And and the cool thing about unlearning that I like to tell people, because maybe they feel like they're ending up in a negative, because they're like, well, I've learned so much, I'm gonna have a sunk cost.
Right.
I'm like, unlearning is learning.
Right.
Like you're giving something, right? The whole principle of regeneration, you have to give something first.
Mm,
Then you can receive something, then you can give something back with what you've received, and you can give it forward too. You don't only have to give it back, right? So unlearning, you're giving something away.
mm,
Just like the fire, you need to put wood in the fire for it to burn. If you don't put wood, the fire goes out. So what are you going to give that brightens the light so you can receive something and then give something else?
mm,
So unlearning is learning, right? And I like to tell people that because the whole point is to give something first.
mhm.
That's the neuroplastic shift that has to happen in the brain right now. Because right now it's just take, 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 take.
Totally.
We don't even receive. We just take. Never mind, give something first and then receive something. The ability to receive is a whole other part of the equation that we need to work on, right? Which ties into grief and gratitude and the fact that they're two sisters walking hand in hand, and you only grieve for things that you love, and if you love them, then you would grieve them,
Mhm.
right? So the ability to receive is the ability to even allow grief and gratitude to be a part of your life, you know?
Mm.
And these two things, or Martin Prechtel calls them grief and praise. So yeah, I just like to tell people that unlearning is learning. Don't worry. You're not going to be at a net
It's so
zero.
good. I love that. Ra, this has been such a blessing of a conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. So grateful for you. And anything else that you care to share?
I think we shared a lot.
You shared enough. Totally. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Mahalo.